welcome back to the Every Calorie Counts podcast. We are back. It's been like a week, 2 weeks that we haven't recorded. I don't know. But we're here to talk about training. I do want to remind everyone that this is being recorded on Zoom. And it is on our YouTube channel, which you can find in some of our links somewhere on some social media. So go find it or just search Every Calorie Counts on the
Every
tube.
Calorie Counts.
What?
Oh yeah, my bad. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead. It's
What's that?
the thing that I always forget when I'm searching for the podcast on every major platform. We are the Every Calorie Counts podcast
Podcast.
versus just about any other social media platform. It's just Every
Every
Calorie
calorie
Counts.
counts.
And when I say by
True.
every other social media platform, I mean YouTube and Instagram.
Exactly. Just two other places. Yeah, we're chatting about training, which is something that Tim said has been coming up a lot with clients. Also, I'm still kind of hoarse. I don't want people thinking that I sound like this. I'm still hoarse from this weekend.
Marina's obviously very sick, so we're gonna have to bear with her
Tim is
because
actually sick.
I don't really do sick. That's not something that I don't believe in getting sick. Um, I don't think it's a real thing. So Marina's saying I'm sick. But what I will say is I have this like weird thing going on right now where I have like this my nose kind of hurts and I have a lot of
Where you're
snot that gets built up.
congested
Yeah.
and
So if you
no,
guys hear me with like I have to like stop mid-sentence and swallow a whole bunch of nasty snot that's in the back of my throat. That's
that's
not me being
delicious.
sick. I just, I'm dealing with the unfortunate set of circumstances that I'm dealing with today. But for the most part,
Delicious.
I am made out of antimantium, which I'm pretty sure is the metal that Wolverine's made out of.
And
You'd have to
tomato.
Google it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. I'm pretty sure it's antimantium, or something along those lines.
Okay.
So I don't. I fucking, I regenerate like that. So I've also injected myself with so much glutathione, ECC 20 on amino asylum.
And mantium, yeah.
Yeah, antimantium, see, and adamantium, whatever. But
And
anyway, bottom line is I've injected myself with so much glutathione in the last like 24 hours that I couldn't possibly be sick. I actually had to order more. I do the do. I don't really get sick. I just get these like I get it's like I didn't sleep enough last night is basically what it comes down to. So again, we'll bear with Marina and her sickness today. But otherwise, yeah, especially on the YouTube, if I'm fucking, wiping boogies and whatnot, it's allergies. So the whole idea today, and we keep doing this where we're having like a really bad continuing, like we haven't booked any guests, which is just pure neglect. And like there's even times during the week where I'm like, man, I should message somebody, and then it's in one ear and out the other. So that's one of my goals here. Is it over the next few days to start reaching out to people to get some guests back on.
yeah, and
To
if
have
there are people that you guys want to hear from, shoot us a message on Instagram, either of our Instagrams, and we can see if we can get them on. We love suggestions.
Yeah, for sure. The cool thing is now too, we've been doing it for a little while, and we have a little bit of a background as far as the people that have been on the podcast. So it's like, I think it's easier, speaking even from myself and from my perspective, it's a lot easier to kind of like, make the time to be on a podcast where that podcast has a little bit, and I know Every Calorie Counts is not a very big podcast, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant in that way at all. But again, some of the people that have been on it in the past have a solid reputation, right? They're people that have a strong following. And then on top of that, we do have at least a decent amount of downloads. At least I've been told. I've never even seen our Buzzsprout before. But
We
Marina and
do.
Alex have both told me that we have a pretty good amount of downloads. So it's one of those things where it's like, I feel pretty confident about who we can get on as long as we don't get douchebags that are like, well, yeah, we can come on, but you have to pay me for the time. We've had a couple of those D bags,
Yeah.
a couple of them. I'm not afraid to say. I contacted Shelby Starnes once. And he was like, $500 for the hour or whatever it is.
Okay, that's
Yeah, to be
absurd.
on the podcast. And I was like, dude, nobody wants to hear from me that bad. I was actually gonna like wait until he came on and be like, challenge him a little bit as far as the things that he's doing. But anyway, bottom line is,
Make the most
um,
of it.
yeah. Bottom line is we're going to talk a little training. And we came up with this one, same as usual. The last three podcasts or so have been something that we just kind of came up with off the cuff. So don't necessarily have anything planned here for this, but the reason why I came up with this because it's something that's been kind of a topic of conversation for me with a few clients here recently. And just because we've had this conversation, if you're a client listening, and we have had a conversation about this training, don't take anything that I'm saying here, broadly and generally as it relates specifically to you. Sometimes we do these and we do bring up a client case or two. And then all of a sudden, the crazy thing is, honestly, 99.9% of the time when I am bringing up a client case on here and I'm being a little bit more vague about the client, right? It's never, ever, 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 ever the client that I'm speaking about that reaches out to me and says anything
Yeah.
about like, what you guys said on the podcast, it's always three people that I didn't even think of when I was speaking about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, are you talking about me? I'm like, dude, where'd you even get that from? Like, how
Yeah.
you don't even belong in this group? Like, I don't understand how you. Anyway, bottom line is this is all for like educational purposes. And even if I sound like I'm being a little bit of a passionate dick, that's basically what Tim is kind of like a passionate, very, very passionate, not a dick, but very passionate. But anyway, training. I think one of the biggest things that I encounter here, right? And I want to kind of break this down into little segments further, but training, how often should we be changing our training, right? I think is a really like big thing for a lot of people to try to comprehend, and a big thing that
Hmm.
they have to get past, right? When they come to work with us, right? Because they came to us with zero consistency within their training efforts, right? I think a lot of people, when they go to the gym, what they're doing is, and this is exactly what I did when I was younger. I would go to the gym and it would be like, I know I had chest today, or I know I had, shoulders, or I knew I had arms, or I knew I had legs, or whatever it was, but I didn't have any plan, right, of exactly what I was going to do. It was based on who I was going to work out with at the time. Or if I was training by myself, it was just going to be based on feel and what I kind of wanted to train that day. And I always had a base concept, you know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, if I'm going in to do chest, there would always be incline dumbbells, right?
Hmm.
If I was going to train, back, there would always be deadlifts. If I was going to train quads, there would always be leg presses or squats, right? So like there was always like key fundamentals, right? And those might get swapped out once in a while, but those are like the key foundation exercises that I had. Um, but there was no like rhyme or reason to how that day would go. It was more so dictated by, again, who was there with me, what piece of equipment was available, how I quote unquote felt, what I wanted to do on that particular day, right? So I didn't really start following a true and honest training plan until I got my first coach ever. Right. And they put me on a training plan, and I did follow that like to the T for the most part.
Hmm.
Right. I trained more. It was a push pull legs program that I was put on, and I was supposed to be training 6 days a week, right? Push pull leg 3 times. And there were weeks where I would train like 6 or 7 days and just continue to rotate the cycle. But other than that, I mean, I would legitimately follow that plan the same way every single time. I actually was the guy. I had somebody print out the plan for me at the gym I worked at, because I don't know how to work printers. So they printed out the plan for me, and I would literally bring it around with me for the first whatever month or so that I was on the training plan. And I would legitimately do it, like I said, exactly the way that it said, right? Time, rest periods, all the different stuff. And from that point on, I realized like how much more result was in doing the same thing every single time.
Hmm.
It was also the first coach I had for all intents and purposes, so I'm sure there was part of that. It was like I got shredded for the first time. I'd always gotten to a place where I was very lean whenever I was dieting, because this is before I had competed. So I'd always gotten to the point where I was very lean when I dieted, but I had never gotten to the point where like I was lean, jacked, and shredded all at the same time. This was that moment for me. So there's probably a positive association and correlation to anything I was doing at that time, but that positive association correlation grew to the point where if I wasn't on a training plan at certain times, or I didn't have at least a concept in my mind of going in and doing very much the same shit over and over and over again, that I felt the exact opposite. Like I felt lost, right?
Hmm.
Whereas previous to finding, this training plan and sticking to it for so long, there was no such thing as feeling lost, because I was essentially, that was where my comfort was being
Hmm.
lost, was not having any
Exactly.
consistency, was not having a plan, right? So but the bottom line is, from there, I did kind of recognize how important this concept was, right? Just based off of my own anecdotal results, right? It was something that became very very important within my process. But then from there, we also now have a lot of research at this point, right? And if we go back, I'm sure there was some research that existed even at that point. But since the hypertrophy space has kind of grown so much, right, we have a lot more research in there now. And I can't quote any specific research off the top of my head for this one. Yeah, I can't quote anything off the top of my head. I will butcher it for sure. But the bottom line is there's tons of research now showing that we want that, continued adaptation over a period of time, right? Like we have to understand like the gym is a stimulus, right? We're using it
Hmm.
as a stimulus, right? As a specific stress, as a hermetic stress, right? And that means that we're going in there to do things as far as breaking down tissue, as far as creating a certain amount of like localized inflammation, and then the whole concept there is we're recovering to force adaptations in terms of growth, in terms of strength, in terms of central nervous system strength, all this different stuff. And then over time, right, we get better and better and better and better and better at this one skill, right, which is this particular exercise that I'm doing, right? And those adaptations grow larger and larger and larger based on that. So now if we break that down to the concept of I'm just kind of going to the gym to do something different, or I'm going to do based on feel, I kind of do the same thing, but not really do the same thing. What you're doing is you're creating more of a novel stimulus every time you go in there, and you're losing a ton of benefit from not getting that continued adaptation over
Hmm.
time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now we really know there's a truth and a benefit to it. But we've also seen it, like I said, anecdotally, I've seen it with myself. We've also seen it greatly in the bodybuilding world, where you have people like Dorian Yates, came out a few years ago, or was it Jay Cutler? I think it was Dorian Yates. It might have been Jay Cutler, but I know both of them have said something. But in terms of my recent memory and what I remember, I think it was Yates that came out and said that he used the same training plan, for whatever it was, like his entire career or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Something substantial. And if for people that don't know, Dorian Yates was considered to be, or is considered to be, one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, one of the most winningest bodybuilders of all time as far as the amount of Olympias that he won. And at the time that he was winning, he was kind of like a standout guy in terms of the amount of muscularity that he had. And I know a lot of people like, but drugs and blah. Yeah, 100%. Obviously, duh, you F and reach up, but it doesn't matter how much extracurricular stuff he was doing. Training is going to be the precipice of all gains, right?
Exactly.
So again, we had a guy that was a standout, person in the industry as far as muscle development is concerned, specifically. Saying, "Hey, I trained and used the same plan." Let's just say it was my entire career. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. He might have said for a year, 2 years, whatever. But let's just say it was for my entire career. He would do the same exact thing, right? And he continually got better and better and better until it was towards the end. And he had injuries, and then he fell off the face of the earth from there. But it was one of those things where we're starting to bring to life how important it is, right, to stick to a training plan, and do the same thing continuously over and over and over. Now, that I think is a very difficult thing that for people that come to us, right, to be able to comprehend and then be able to stick to. And I see this going multiple different directions for people. Well, let me continue down this path before I get into that. The bottom line is, I think it's hard for people because we talked about this on a recent episode. How many young people we have
Hmm.
that are in the gym, right, and they're in the gym more because there's a social aspect to the gym, right? As well, I should say more, and maybe it's the same as their need or want to progress, right? So they're there
Hmm.
to socialize. They're going to train with this person. So I have a lot of people that have come to me, right? And eventually their friends also come, right, to train with us. But it's like they're the person in the group that kind of gets the coach first because they have certain aspirations that they want to meet,
Hmm.
right? And then you give them a training plan, right? But yet they're still going to the gym with their two or three friends that they've been going to the gym with. And it's like, are you really following this, or are you just kind of meeting up with these guys and doing your own thing, right? Or like I know a couple of people that are on the team where it's like I've seen they train with like one person or one other person, right? And it's like now they follow me on Instagram too, and I follow them, and like I'm watching them kind of like do the same training program that I'm giving their friend that works with me. And it's like I know that they're just doing the same thing together, but again, that training plan was made for this individual, not
Hmm.
necessarily you, even though you're just kind of following along and doing it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like there again, I think the point that I'm going with there is that it's easy to be not persuaded, influenced by the group of individuals that you're going with. And when I say influenced, I don't even mean like a negative association attached with
Yeah.
that, where they're influencing you to do something bad or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're just being influenced by the idea of, hey, I want to have fun, I want to enjoy myself, I want to train with these guys and hang out, or these girls and hang out, rather than, doing what plan is prescribed for me, you know what I mean, and what plan was created for me. So it's one of those things where I think that's a big thing. I also think it's a big thing where people just kind of get mentally attached to wanting to go in and do something different every time.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've trained this way my entire life. I like it. I enjoy it. And then you put somebody on a plan. I'll calm down in a second. Let you go. Put somebody on a plan, and they're like, well, I kind of like the feel of incline
Yeah.
dumbbell flies. It's like, well, right. But I also put this plan together for a very specific reason. It's great that you like the feel of that. But like sometimes just going away from what you've been doing so consistently over a period of time because you bias it, you like it, you have a bias towards it, right?
Mhm.
Going away from that and doing a different exercise because you've been doing that one for the last fucking 3 years, could have its benefit as well, even though I know we just said the longer the better.
Yeah.
But right. So there's multiple different reasons why I see people going away from this. But go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, with the whole idea of like wanting to do new things and switch things up, I think deep down it's because it is more fun trying new things. Like when I do update a client's training plan, the first thing I hear from them after they've been on the other training plan for so long is like, "Oh, I'm having so much fun." And it's
Right.
like this may relate more to like the younger clients, but like, or maybe even I guess it doesn't really matter, competitors or lifestyle, but like if you need to get out of your head the idea of having fun in the gym, I think. Because at least for me, like not every day in the gym is going to be fun. Yes, I love it, I enjoy it, I love training. But when it comes down to it, I'm there to complete a job and to train, and it's just how growing up, when whatever sport you played, when you go to practice, it's to work your ass off and get better. It's not always going to be fun. And I think that's going to come down to people's priorities when it comes to why they're in the gym as well.
Yeah, 100%. I always go back and forth, and we're going to go off on like kind of a side tangent here for a second, but I always go back and forth with the concept. Like people always talk about like going to the gym should be enjoyable. And like if you're not making it enjoyable for
Yeah.
clients, then it's going to be hard for them to adhere to it and hard for them to get the result. And I can completely and totally grasp that. Right. I get it. I understand
Yeah.
where people are coming from and where they're going with that, but my only argument would be, well, what happens if somebody's concept of enjoying the gym, right, revolves around them kind of hanging out with their best friend that's there, and now they're too busy gossiping and talking about what's going on with this, and
Yeah.
texting people on the phone and whatnot, rather than training with a high enough level of intensity to be able to get a
To
result.
progress.
So
Yeah.
that, what happens if somebody's like, no, that's not me, I go to the gym by myself, I just don't like following a training plan, so because I enjoy training this way, it's like, okay, cool. But you're also 160 pounds and you've never been bigger than 160 pounds because you have no fucking clue what you're doing when it comes to the earnest
Yeah.
concept of what we're talking
Like
about
if you
here.
want to get somewhere at some point, you need to sit down and realize the steps you have to take to get there.
Yeah, exactly. You can keep having fun if you want, if that's
Yeah.
what you want, or you can keep like enjoying it to the fullest extent. But at the end of the day, for me, and the enjoyment of the gym for me has always come down to the fucking results. I enjoy
Yeah.
training. I love training, right? I'm actually having a personal journey right now where I'm struggling with not being able to train as much as I would like to train. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like training to me has always been linked to that result too. Like if I would probably go to the gym, and I've actually said this before. In my mind, if you told me I could never build another pound of muscle or lose another pound of fat, I would still probably wake up tomorrow and do the same exact thing that I do every single
Mhm.
day. Right. Now, that being said, I do attach training at the gym. My motivation for training at the gym is to get better. You know what I mean? Like there's 100% that's an underlying motivation for me. It's not just going in there because like this is fun. It's like it's
Yeah.
enjoyable and it's fun. And the reason why is because I've always attached it to being better, right? And like getting better, right? And I think once we start to have that mentality, bringing it back to the point that we're trying to make here, start to take that concept and drive performance based training, right? And I say that almost a little
Exactly.
loosely every time I say performance based training because we are talking bodybuilding or hypertrophy
Hmm.
is probably the better way of putting it there, the more globalized, concept. When you say bodybuilding, I think it kind of narrows the scope here and
Hmm.
we'll
I
shut off.
agree.
Bottom line is building muscle tissue is what we're all after to a certain extent, right? Or building our metabolism, building our bodies better, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is that style of training, right? It's not athletics, it's not performance based, I guess, in the true sense of the word.
Yeah.
But what I try to get people to comprehend is like, hey, again, I'm not just looking at training myself as like I want to go there to socialize, blah, blah, blah. I do it because I want to be better. And sometimes better, right? When you're going into train, it's I'm not going to train today and physically look better because I
Hmm.
trained today. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like it's not the way it works, right? We have to train over the course of the next 3 or 4 years to have that physically, come to fruition in terms of a visualization that we're trying to create. So when I say better, I want to perform, right? Back to that performance concept, better than I did last week. I want to
Exactly.
perform better than I did last month. I want to perform at a higher level. And it's like for me, going to the gym at this point and for many years, right, has really been about, hey, I want to be better than I was last week. I want to be better than I was 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. And I need to continue to do that same thing over and over and over again to realistically get better. Otherwise, I'm kind of just going to the gym and lifting weights, right? And
Hmm.
going to the gym and lifting weights, while it will work for somebody, and this is, I think, the biggest problem. So if we slow down for a second, right, and we start to kind of, I guess, compartmentalize this a little bit, right? What we're talking about is going to, I was going to say going to a coach, but like starting with a coach, getting a training plan, and being able to see that training plan through for whatever time frame that coach deems. Right. For us, it's usually going to be somewhere around like 4 to 6 months. I'd want a client to be on the same training plan, right? To
Hmm.
be able to get the most out of that training plan from a stimulus and adaptation standpoint. Right. And now we're kind of going down that path of, like why, how, motivations behind sticking to that, and how we're looking at it within that concept, right? And to me, it really does come back to I lost my point. Son of a bitch. God damn it. Man, I'm having such a retarded brain fart. It's not
You wanna know
even.
why? It's because you're sick.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's pick up here. We'll pick up here. So performance-based training, by and large, a lot of people have heard of performance-based training based on the concept of progressive overload, right? Like we hear these
Hmm.
buzzwords, right, all the time in the industry, and people kind of get a hold of it and they kind of push the concept over and over and over and over and over again, right? And one thing that has always driven me nuts about the concept of progressive overload is how much it's bastardized, and how much it's kind of taken to it.
Bastardized?
Oh yeah, like it's turned into something that's completely and totally not. Like people
Okay.
have no concept of what the fuck they're talking about, and they're posting and they're using words like progressive overload, and it's like that's not progressive.
Stimulus.
Yeah, it's not progressive overload.
Adaptation.
So we're talking about training for, whatever, being on a training plan for 4 to 6 months at a clip, right? I think one of the most important things that we're getting out of that, and we're talking about performance-based training and yada yada yada, right? I think one of the most important things we get out of that though is the progressive overload concept. And just to kind of clear that up for people, right? The idea around the performance-based training, progressive overload concept, it happens over time, right? This happen progressive overload is not something you
Hmm.
do within a session. So again, when
Yeah.
I'm talking about it being bastardized, when I'm talking about people, presenting it the wrong way, what I see a lot on social media is people talking about like, oh, I did 4 sets of leg press today and I progressively overloaded because I increased the amount of weight that I did on those 4 sets. That's not progressive overload. I'm sorry, that's not the
Yeah.
way it works. That is absolutely not the way it works. Progressive overload is something that happens in a very incremental concept in terms of you improving your efficiencies within each lift, right? Or
No.
improving, I don't know if efficiencies is the right way of putting it.
Well, you
You
get
being
better
able,
at doing the thing.
yeah,
That's
in some way, shape,
efficiency.
or form. Yeah, whether okay, cool. That's efficiency. So I did use a good word.
Yeah.
Whether it's via the added weight on the bar, whether it's via added reps on the bar, whether it's added tension in some way, shape, or form from slowing down, improving your execution, whatever it might be, right? When you are progressively doing that over that long period of time, let's just say that 4 to 6 months window, that equals progressive overload,
Hmm.
right? Because that 5 pounds that you did this week, right, on this one set, right? I'm sorry, it's not the 5 pounds. That the weight that you did on this one set this week, can go up by 5 pounds the next week, and then go up by 5 pounds the following week, and then or up by a rep. Weight's not going to be a linear concept here. I apologize. So it's one of those things where we have to recognize, like, again, if we're we know all these things are kind of being said, right? And we can recognize all these things as like, oh, this person says it's good, that person says it's good, that person says, but once you start to highlight it in a way where it's truly like you can comprehend it and you can kind of superimpose it onto what we're talking about here, even the concept of progressive overload, which again, I think most camps within the hypertrophy space are going to agree that
Mhm.
progressive overload is a very real factor as it relates to hypertrophy or building new muscle tissue over time, right? I don't
Yeah.
think many people argue with that. But now going into another concept here in terms of getting the actual response, and honestly, when I say getting the response, I mean building muscle. And honestly, another one that people are going to pretty much unanimously agree on, right? There are still some things that science and some of the research that we have out there have yet to be able to definitively prove as it relates to muscle development. And you do see a lot of people in a lot of different camps arguing about these things and kind of going back and forth. To me, it's all nuance at the end of the day. Like, let's focus on the things that we can all agree on and really maximize those to the fullest extent, right? But at the end of the day, a secondary thing there to the progressive overload would be training at a certain level of intensity. And we say
Hmm.
intensity within the training world, that's actually going to be defined, right? Literally with the idea of how close you're training to your 1 rep max, right? So we want to take certain sets to a certain point under a certain level of intensity, right? And again, intensity is not you going into the gym with this mindset of like, oh, I'm going to go
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's legitimately defined as how close you're training to your 1 rep max. So we can vary our intensity level based on how heavy our loads are, right? And then again, how hard those sets are based on how heavy those loads are, right?
Hmm.
We know there's an effective reps model, right? That some people, and again, I think the force velocity relationship is also something that most camps agree on. And I won't go too deep there, but the bottom line is what I'm trying to get to here is we want to make sure that we're training to an extent where it's like, hey, I do have effective reps as it relates to muscle development. I do have enough, again, quote unquote, intensity to be able to build muscle here, right? And actually have, again, I'm searching for different words here, but effective reps that
Yeah.
go to that hypertrophy stimulus. And I think that when we start to use new exercises over and over and over and over and over again, what you're doing is you're going so far away from that effective reps model. How could you possibly hop on a new exercise today or an exercise that it's like, and you've seen this plenty of times too when people are talking about this shit on Instagram, right? Where like,
Hmm.
oh, I haven't done, whatever. I haven't squatted in the last, 6 months, but you're throwing it in there today. Are you going to squat again next time you train? What about the time after that? What
Yeah.
about the time after that? So why the fuck are you doing it today for no
Hmm.
reason for 6 months, for the first time in 6 months,
Yeah, for
right?
16
Unless
days.
it's
Yeah.
something you're going to do progressively over the course of the next, like I said, 4 to 6 months, right? Where it's like now you have the opportunity over that 4 to 6 months to find that place where essentially every set you do is giving you these effective reps, right? Like, especially for us, if I'm programming a working set that's 6 to 9 reps into somebody's plan, right? The idea there is that you're finding over time a set that's a very arduous six
Hmm.
to nine reps. It's hard to get through. They're grinders of reps from the first rep where you start, right? On a 6 rep set, literally, even the first rep should be relatively hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The second rep should be even harder. The third rep should be even harder. By the time you're getting to that fourth rep, you should be questioning whether you can even get to 6 reps or not.
Hmm.
Every time. So again, once we're in that place. Once we're in that 4 to 6 month concept, right? And we're in this progressive overload concept. Now we're starting to develop this idea that like, hey, I am training within this effective rep range more times than not because I allowed myself to find the place where I'm strongest within this particular movement, and I'm no longer working up to that. Now, I just want to clarify real quick. Effective reps doesn't necessarily have to be something where it's just super heavyweight in 6 to 9 rep range.
Hmm.
The way that I look at it is, let's say you have, whatever, 10 reps, right? You have 15 reps, you have 20 reps, right? If we look at it there, like the 10 rep range might be something where just like the last 3 to 4 reps are actually effective reps as it relates to hypertrophy, right? Those harder, again, that force velocity relationship. Once those reps start to involuntarily slow, right? Because it's so fucking hard and so fucking heavy, right? Now we're in that effective rep range. My daughter is being a little Miss Rose, enough. So yeah, sorry, she's being a bad baby.
It's
And
been
then so
crazy.
that 10 rep range, the last 3 to 4 reps, right, are going to be the effective rep range. And then if you're doing 15 reps, Again, the last maybe 5 reps or so is going to be effective rep range. If you're doing 20 reps, I'd still say around the last, like whatever, 3 to 5 reps are going to be effective
Mm-hmm.
reps. There's not going to be any difference between those groups. It's just the amount of time that it took to get you to those effective reps, right? So again, as I'm on a training plan for a long period of time, I can figure out how to get to those effective reps within my working sets much faster, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, because I'm programming myself through this entire time to be able to start at X weight, which is giving me, more effective reps at this set. Does all that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it all makes complete sense. I mean, of course, to me, it makes sense because I feel like I think training is so cool. I think training is so cool. No, but I actually think it's so cool because especially when you're on a training plan for the 4 to 6 months, I've said this a million times, but training with intensity is a skill that you develop over time, and it goes up and down throughout, like, I don't know, each phase in your, I don't know, training and stuff, but yeah, it takes time, like you said, to get to that point and understand what it feels like and do it over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think honestly, to me, I think the biggest point that I'd want to make here, right? And maybe even something that we can kind of almost like in conclusion, right? Where I think when it comes to training, right? And I'm going to say this like, I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, because I do think that there's an importance to how we're programming. I
Mm-hmm.
do think training is one of those things where it's like, hey, diet wise, right? Nutrition wise, if we got somebody that's, let's say they're a high level competitor, they've already developed a certain physique, right? And they want to compete at a higher level, is nutrition really something that's going to be significantly different? It could be different, don't get me wrong. Maybe that person, up until the point they came to us, is eating nothing but shit. We fortify their diet a little bit more efficiently. We do, like, there are nuances there. And again, I don't want to create some sort of idea that there's not. But when it comes down to it, especially when we're talking about somebody's physique, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really going to come down to, like, macros and adjusting things within certain time frames, and managing their fatigue and managing all these kind of life factors and all this different stuff that makes that person demonstratively better, right? When it comes to training, I would say, again, there's still some very significant things that we could do from person to person, especially with people that don't have a specific, to kind of heighten their results, if you would, right, or improve their results. That being said, I think the biggest factor when it comes to training, no matter what your knowledge base is, right? No matter how smart you are when it comes to training, um, no matter what somebody's genetic disposition is, no matter how many drugs they're on, right? Like, I think the number one underlying thing that has to be understood is, like, the training plan is probably not as important as the effort you're putting in the gym. So
Yeah.
I have all these people that are like, "Hey, you're gonna change my training plan? Like, hey, I just started and I'm only 8 weeks in, but can you change my training plan? Hey, I know it's only been 3 months, but can you change my training plan? Like, what about this change? What about this change? What about this change? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that." It's like, dude, just fucking work harder. Just
Mm-hmm.
fucking work harder. Learn how to take sets deeper. Just like, and Steve and I were talking about this on the live, where it's like, dude, you even realize how few exercises there are that are actually good at building
Yeah,
muscle
like
when it comes to
what am I
training?
going to change?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how much can I change? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could throw in these little nuances here and there, like, quarter reps, partial reps, this superset, that superset. We could swap crucifix raises out for standing dumbbell rate or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of, similar to a certain extent, right? I'm
Yeah.
just rearranging things in a different way, right? And don't get me wrong, because I've always been a trainer, like, always programming training actually kind of gives me a little bit of a hard on. Like, I like programming training. Like, when I put together this plan, I'm thinking about doing it myself. So it's almost like this new different thing. It always kind of like makes me excited. So I get people kind of getting excited with a new training plan. But again, the point is, if you feel like your training plan isn't working for you, right? It's probably because you're a bitch and you're just not working hard enough.
Yeah.
Honestly, at the end of
That's
the day,
true.
it's like I've never seen, I will be as outspoken as anybody when it comes to quote unquote shitty coaching, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and and coaches that are putting together, maybe I don't know, just shitty plans for whatever reason, right? And I've seen some plans from a drug perspective that can really, like, be deleterious. We've seen one recently with a female coming to us on every drug under the sun
Mm-hmm.
to get ready for a bikini show at the age, at a later age bracket, a master's class. I sent you the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, honestly, we didn't even do that well as far as the placing is concerned. It's like, I've seen plenty of bad plans. I've seen diets, right, that are like egregious, and it's like, why are you doing this to this chick? She's also complaining about gut health symptoms and yada yada yada, and you're feeding her all this food. Like, dude, but when it comes to training, it's really hard to like pick apart somebody's training plan and be like, this is
Yeah.
stupid. The number one thing I see with training plans just is too much. It's
Yeah.
fucking stupid. I've seen, there's a chick on Instagram, Lowly Fitness. People can look up. Like, I've seen a couple of her training plans. I've actually seen it a couple of times, and her training plans are retarded. They're literally like, 100, we're doing the tricep. It's like 100 reps. All this crazy. Yeah, it's like legitimately the dumbest training I've ever seen.
Okay.
That being said, my point here is
That's rare.
no, not even that it's rare. Not even that it's rare. Let's say it's normal, right? The
Yeah.
bottom line is if you are training hard enough, and then ultimately, even if you're training smart enough, we're on a training plan
Hmm.
like that, taking off and you're eating enough to be able to support that training, yada, yada, yada. Based on the fact that you're training hard enough, you're probably gonna get a result
Yeah.
anyway, right? Like, I don't care if you're doing something that's like this new science-based approach where we have this converging, my humerus is adducting ever so perfectly across my chest to be able to support additional fiber recruitment and all this different shit. I
Yeah.
don't care if you're doing fucking, I have a newbie fit or whatever those things are called on my titties, and now that's making my chest contract,
Yeah.
more, or I'm doing, this, that, that, whatever it is, right? Or it's just a plan that's like, hey, go bench, go do dumbbell flies, go do, dumbbell pressing, and then finish off with a lot of reps on a machine, right? And as
Mhm.
much as that's plain, very, very old school, if you
I was
would,
just gonna
right?
say this is old school. Yeah.
You could do it in your
Just
basement or you
train
have
your
like a
ass off.
fucking $30 set. Yeah. Versus that other person that's talking all this crazy shit. Either one of those approaches is going to work if you're
Hmm.
training hard enough. It's
Yeah.
literally only going to come down to that. So again, whether you're swapping out exercises, whether you are I don't know, taking advantage of every latest, thing that comes up from a science perspective, or as long as you're just going in there and training hard over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you're doing full body, a push pull legs, a
Hmm.
bro split. It doesn't fucking matter, right? If you're going in there and training hard, you're gonna get the result. I've
Yeah.
talked to Austin about this when I first got the training plan that he sent me. It was just completely totally different than what I had been doing at the time. And I think he said something like, dude, if you want to change it, we could change it. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, no, I don't care, dude. Like, at the end of the day, it's just different, was all I was saying. I know, right, that the difference from training plan to training plan is going to be just the effort that you're putting into it. I can get results on anything you give me. And he was kind of like, yeah, high five. This is going to work perfectly well. Like, let's go do it. It's one of the first coaching conversations we had when I started coaching with him. But yeah, the bottom line there is just, if you're looking at your training plan and you think that's the missing link, you're
Hmm.
so fucking wrong, right? You're
Yeah.
so wrong. You're so wrong. It's never going to be the training plan. It's going to be how you're approaching that training plan,
Hmm.
how much effort you're putting into that training plan, how focused you are on progressing that training plan over time. All that's going to come back to your work and effort in the gym.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take that one step further and say if you have a coach, you should be you should be sending them training videos to get better.
Yeah, that's
If you actually want to get the most out of your training and learn how to take your training to the next level, you need to be sending your coach training videos because that is how you get better and better and better. And I notice the clients I have that consistently send me training videos week to week are the ones that progress the fastest. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah, 100%. And I can that's the reason why Marina's not bigger, because she doesn't send any training
Yeah.
videos on
And
a
that's why
regular
I'm
basis.
small.
But no, seriously, at the end of the day, I'm telling you that's 100% legit. Like, the people that are sending training videos are also the ones that are training the hardest in the gym, right? Because
Yeah.
they're setting, and if they're not, I've been escalating how intense they're training, right? There's some people where, and I can think of somebody right off the top of my head, right? Where it's like, they're sending me videos. I'm like, you got to train harder, got to train harder, got to
Hmm.
train harder. Literally every week for like 6 weeks in a row. It's like, you got to push harder. I want to see this. I want to see
Yeah.
that. Send me back this movement next time, but I want it to be twice as heavy, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they stop sending videos, right? And it's like, listen, the one thing I'm not going to do is beg you guys to
Yeah.
do something right? Based on the reality of like, it's in there. You're supposed to send it every week. It's literally right in your check-in questions where it says it at the end, send 3 training videos weekly. If you're deciding to skip that part, right? I don't have time to call you out on that every single week and push you that much further, right? But I can guarantee you that person I'm talking about, they're probably not going to ever get the result that they want in totality, right? Because I know what that person wants in totality. They're not going to get there, right? What I try to explain to people about training versus just nutrition, with nutrition, I can make your body bigger or smaller, period, done, stop, right? I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller,
Mm-hmm.
right? With training, we start to sculpt that body and
Mm-hmm.
create something, right? That's maybe a little bit more appealing as it relates to what your end expectations are throughout your transformation process, right? So it's like, not taking advantage of that training is leaving 50% of what's on the table when it comes to, like I said, that physical transformation that some people might be looking for. Right. So, for all intents and purposes, I also have people that don't train. Like I can think of people that have gotten great results right now,
Yeah.
that are getting great results right now, that don't train. They don't have
Yeah.
time for it. Maybe they don't want to, whatever the case is. And at the end of the day, I would always recommend training, obviously, but if you don't want to train, again, I can make your body smaller. I can make you lose
Yeah.
weight. We can probably make you a healthier individual, right? We can make sure that we focus on daily movement every day. But if your goal is to really evolve the way that your body looks or physically sculpt your body, if you would, the reality is you're gonna have to figure out how to train and how to train at that high level, right? And I also think that it's important for us to always realize that, like, hey, it does look different for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
My biggest thing with talking about intensity and lifting heavy weights and finding, force velocity relationship and kind of what that looks like in terms of those slow grinding reps, yada, 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 is that it starts to put people in this position where they get nervous, they get scared. Like, that's not me. I don't go to the gym and, like, go crazy like that. And we've done this. If you guys go to the YouTube, the Every Calorie Counts YouTube, I have moms that were training there, right? I have competitive bodybuilders that were training there. And if you look
Yeah.
at the difference, in their kind of outward projection of how hard something is, it's going to be different when I'm training Riley that's lifting 150-pound dumbbells on a bench press rather than the mom that I'm training, right? That's maybe doing 15 pounds on whatever they're doing. But the one thing that you will notice in both the videos is that their end point, as far as where their sets are taken to, is going to be relatively similar, right?
Yeah.
It looks really hard. They're slowing down that rep speed at the end involuntarily, even though they're trying, they're pushing their ass off, and they're
Mm-hmm.
both finding that end point to where it's like, I can't move this weight anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
again, Riley might be the one that's screaming his face off and like whatever, right? Grunting, whatever it is, right? And that looks and feels such a high level. The mom might be somebody that's like, you could see it in her face. She's grimacing, but she's not like grunting. She's not screaming. She's not making a big deal. Maybe she even giggles towards the end because that's what a lot of women do for some reason,
Yeah.
right? When in doubt, giggle it out. And there's just there's a little bit of a difference, perception of what's happening there, but internally we're meeting the same end outcomes. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, for the mom, it might even be that 12, 15, let's just say 20 rep range where we're kind of leading up to those effective reps. Whereas for Riley, maybe it is that 6 to 9 rep range where we have a little bit of a better comprehension of what we're doing. We're a little bit more comfortable in that uncomfortable position as far as being under that load, right? And moving a heavy object. But at the end of the day, again, the outcomes are always going to be the same.
Oh, yep. Nailed it.
So,
Um,
so mean brain fart in the middle of this podcast, which I'm still upset about because I felt like I was going, like I had all this shit in my
brain
brain that
fart.
was going really hard, and then I just kind of like I shat it out my ears. Whatever like information I had in my
So
head,
descriptive.
shat it out my ears.
Oh God. Do you have anything else to add?
I got nothing. I got nothing.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Share with a friend and let us know what you want to hear next and who you want to hear from. Peace out.
Word.